Hello, everyone. Uh, Welcome. My name is Rachel Gita Karp. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the programs director at the Center for Artistic Activism.
Hi everyone, I'm Crystal Barrett. Thank you for being here today. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the programs manager at the Center for Artistic Activism, and I'd like our ED to say hi and introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Bray. I'm the executive director of the Center for Artistic Activism. It's so exciting to see everybody from all over, including Nancy is in France. Fantastic. Thanks for being here.
And we are also joined by two of our favorite collaborators, Alexandra Leal Silva of Marimoto and Alexia Kemmerling of the American Association of People with Disabilities. And we'll all share more about ourselves in a moment, so you'll hear from them a lot. But first, to let you know kind of what's ahead, this event is about creating space to reflect on our work, to dig into patterns that we often find ourselves in, and to share ways to reconnect with imagination, even in these very hard, challenging times. And we'll be inviting folks, all of you, to use the chat today. So if you use a screen reader, you might want to turn off the chat reader, and we will verbally uplift answers and any questions that come up. And now we actually have some questions for you to answer in the chat. So, Alexandra, do you want to take it away?
Sure. So, hi, folks. My name is Alexandra. My pronouns are she, her. I'm based in Southern California. I like to tell people that I'm a womb to tomb Californian. I was born on this earth and will die in this dirt. But today we are super excited to be chatting with you all about creativity and how we can apply it to our work. And so we'd love to know if we can put the questions on there. If you could answer one of these two questions, either what part of the work feels heaviest right now, or my particular favorite, in what particular areas or ways do you feel low on creativity, energy, or imagination? And the answer to that might be all the ways, all the areas. It's a tough time, and that would be totally valid. But let us know in the chat how you're feeling, or even like how you're finding joy right now, despite all of the heaviness and all of the, stuff that's going on. Let us know in the chat.
Sharon shared, I'm guessing for the first question, all of the oppression nationally and worldwide is feeling very heavy. Lowland, how the nonstop grief feels heaviest. Vincent shares that it's hard to make space for the emotions and the processing and the necessary work. Absolutely. Danny is putting pen to paper, feels heavy, and the world right now is suffocating. Ted, I think, is finding joy perhaps by making banner ads mocking the administration. Elka is dealing with, it was maybe a way of feeling better is dealing with the tech involved with Vote 411, which is a great resource. Savannah mentions the grief and stress from the events of the moment. These are great. There's a few more coming in. Sherry mentions, as a playwright, I feel imagination right now is beside the point. There are so many urgent, compelling, true stories that need to be told. Why would I make anything up? Very interesting. Great. Thank you so much. Feel free to keep them coming, and we can share this out with everyone again afterwards. Um, if you're wondering why, it's interesting, Sherry, to think of it the way that you put it, of why is making things up important right now? And I think that's a good question. But it kind of relates to this idea of like, well, why is innovation or being creative important right now? Um, and something that we felt the need to add to our trainings a lot these days is this idea that um, how important innovation is, especially when times are hard. Because like often there can be a sort of playbook that we turn to of like typical actions to do and campaigns to run. And we forget that those things that feel like go-to tactics today were actually innovations in their time. Like all the tactics that Crystal just brought up, the sit-ins, the boycotts, the social media campaigns, strikes. Once they were new and very well considered, but as they're repeated, they can lose their effectiveness because they might be chosen without much of the planning and forethought that once made them critical to a campaign's success. Like a march, it's expected. And so maybe if you want to have a really big impact with a march, you have to do a really big march, but also even a big march is expected now. And so a big march today isn't going to hit the same way it did in 2020 or 2017 or 1963. And that's not to say not to do those things, but it's just to remember that effectiveness can go down when repetition goes up. And so we're finding how important it is to consider what you're trying to achieve and be open to new ways of achieving it because the landscape has changed and we need to keep changing too. And we know it can be so hard to do that when the world is on fire, like so many of you shared in the chat, but there's hope because we've seen ways that we can help people get out of these sort of down uncreative patterns and find creativity in their work and find all the lightness in it as well. And so that's what we're going to dig into today. But first, we're going to share more about yourselves so that you think that we have anything to share with you and that you should listen to us.
And I just want to highlight Sherry responded to, what Rachel just spoke on. So thank you for that, Sherry. It's really nice to hear. Sherry wrote very well put, inspiring. Thank you. And yes, so I'm going to continue with just a little about us. We are the Center for Artistic Activism. We are a nonprofit that's been around since 2009. And we help people use their creativity and culture to affect power. We help activists, advocates, artists, so many people launch winning campaigns by supercharging the innovation, creativity, and rigor in their work. And we do this through trainings, workshops, events like this one today, consulting, and creating and sharing a lot of resources, which we'll share later on today as well. And we are part of a much bigger group. These are just some of the people we work with, hailing all the way to South Africa, Kenya, Brooklyn, where Rachel is, upstate New York, where Rebecca is, Orlando, Florida, where I am, and so many other places. And we work on a lot of issues. These are just some of the issues we worked on, but we like to say we don't come as the experts on them. We trust the people that we're working with to know the issue and the local culture. They have the expertise in that, and we have expertise in artistic activism. And so hopefully they leave with both. And we've been able to work effectively around the world in 20 some countries, 6 continents, and so many workshops with thousands of in-person participants and more online as well. And this has given us great preparation to work with you all today and to share some of our tips. And this is just a quick video putting some visuals to what we do. All right. And take it away, Alexandra.
Hi, folks. Like I said, my name is Alexandra. Her pronouns are she, her, based in Southern California. And I am coming as representative of Maremoto. Maremoto is a home for visionary change where Latinos have the freedom to build civic, media, and cultural power for our community. And I know community is like a little blocked off there, but imagine. Maremoto envisions a world where Latinos are truly powerful and influential. And that's really relevant, especially in a time like right now when our community is being under attack from from so many different angles. Though we are a new organization, we just started up in July of 2025. So we're just about to hit our 1 year, which is very exciting. We're actually a continuation of several years of work. So we are not new on the scene in any sort of way, and our staff has like a long history of doing this type of work. We're just now doing it under the Maremoto umbrella. And on our screen, we also just put our mascot, which is Uni. He's an urchin, and he's part of the sea. Maremoto means tidal wave in Spanish. So we are here to make a tidal wave in, the United States for Latinos. So that's about my organization. I'll turn it over to Alexia.
Hello, everyone. This is Alexia speaking. So excited to be here with all of you. I am from the American Association of People with Disabilities, which is a national nonprofit that works to increase the political and economic power of disabled people in the US. I specifically work on our voting rights team, which is called Rev Up, which is an acronym that stands for Register, Educate, Vote, Use Your Power. And it works to increase civic engagement in our community and also to improve election accessibility. So we'll share some more examples from our work, but we have a range of photos on this slide showing that we work in the traditional to the creative. We've got photos of traditional voter registration tables, protests and marching, candidate forums, all the way to comic books teaching people to be an accessible democracy, ballot bingo, and accessible voting concerts. Although we are national, our voting rights work is really rooted at the state and local level. So we have disability vote coalitions in 22 states and growing, calling out from the chat, New Yorkers, Ohioans, Massachusetts, Florida. We are in your state and hope to connect.
Thanks. This is Rachel again. So the four of us identified a few patterns that we've seen in our work that people can get into that can prevent them from thinking and acting creatively. I think they align with a lot of what was in the chat. And they are that folks just sort of repeat what they've done before without much thought. They might feel that they don't have the resources to try new things. And they might also feel that they're not creative either at all or in this particular moment. And so we're going to take each one in turn and share stories and frameworks and exercises that you can use to conquer those patterns and reconnect with strategic innovation. So we'll turn it over to Alexandra to talk about that first one.
Yeah, so the first one that we're confronting today is it's what we always do. It's our tradition, it's our signature program. We've been doing it for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. It's just what we do. But oftentimes we can grow attached to our programs, our tactics, even our audiences. And it's like no secret as to why you've invested all of your time and your effort and your energy into these programs. Of course, you're attached to them. Like, I am attached to a stuffed Remy Ratatouille plush, like I'm not judging anyone here. But we don't have to see this as letting go. Instead, we can think about this as leveling up and evolving with the times and the needs of our communities. So like as a Gen Z staffer, I have often heard from my millennial colleagues whom I love and adore about the magic of the Obama campaign, like those years and the tactics and how incredible they felt and what a sensational win it was. And considering that my first election was the 2016 election, wow, I wish to have seen the magic of what a win that would have been. But then that can oftentimes quickly turn into conversations of like, we need to do that again. We need to recapture that magic. We need to use those tactics because they worked in 08 and they worked in 12, so they should work in 2024 and 2028. But we know that like what was so incredible about those years, what was so amazing and why it worked is because organizers were trying new things, were pushing boundaries, were engaging new people. And so the same is true today. I often think about this song called Lady Lady by Olivia Dean. If you don't listen to Olivia Dean, you should because she's magic. But the song is about her personal evolution. And she has a lyric that says, the clothes I've always worn don't suit me anymore. And the same is true in the way that we organize and in the way that we work. We need to be willing to let go of what is no longer serving us and what is no longer serving the purpose of our programs. So, practically, what can this look like? I have a couple of tactics here for you, and one of them is a bit dramatic in its, title, but stay with me. It's called Murder Your Darlings. AKA, don't be precious about your tactics. Be willing to pivot or try something new, even if it's what you've always done, even if it's what feels good. You should be willing to try something new, because if what you've always done is no longer doing what it needs to be doing, we got to change it. And that doesn't mean we have to throw everything away. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can just tweak it. We can just give it a little twist. We can change the shape of it, or the lug nuts, or the audience that we're presenting it to, or the way that we're showing it off, or the way that we're engaging with folks. Sometimes, like, the whole program isn't the issue, it's just one aspect of it. So take a critical lens to what you've been doing and how you've been doing it, and see what can we change about this to meet the moment that we're at. And this can happen in a variety of ways. So, for instance, at Maremoto, I'm on our democracy team. One of the programs that we do is called Pulso del Barrio, which is looking to engage young Latino men, because the young Latino men need us. And one of the things that we did was we went out and we did like focus groups and surveys and research to try to understand the audience better. And we came in with this assumption that, like, oh, if we do a program for Latino men, the Latino men will want to be involved because they're Latino men. Well, through our conversations with them, it came forward that being Latino was not enough of a unifier for these men to want to gather. In fact, they saw it as just one of many labels that they held. They're like, we're also fathers, we're entrepreneurs, we're brothers, we're small business owners, we are like men who are grinding every day to build something for our families. And so when we understood that, it was like, okay, wow, we need to really then adjust the perspective that we're taking on what will engage these young men, because just being Latino is not enough to get them to show up. We even found that a lot of them don't even identify as Latino. They prefer to say they're Mexican American, they're Puerto Ricans, they're from the Bronx. They're like, they have all these different labels that they feel much more kinship with than just being Latino. So how do we even create communities within that larger community that talks to them in a way that they feel truly recognized and truly seen? So again, that's not reinventing the wheel. We're not just going to push out Latino men. We're just finding a new way to engage those men that actually speaks to them. So just because it's what you've always done doesn't mean it's what you always have to do. There are always ways to change and evolve, and it's not giving up, it's leveling up. That's what I am.
And so we would love for y'all to answer in the chat, what's one tactic or approach you rely on that might benefit from a pause, a tweak, or a little fresh air, what Alexandra was just talking about. Okay, and we have some coming in. Sharon shared, I wanted to share that the phrase murder your darling is triggering. Okay.
Totally fair. Totally fair. And thank you for calling that out.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. And Alexandra, there was a way you reworded it. Can you remind us of what that was?
Don't be precious about your tactics. You could also use tweak your tactics. Like, that's the longer phrase, but
Thank you. Mhm. And we have some more coming in. So Julia says, my tactic is to write a poem. It doesn't have to be good, just process through pen on paper.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of some of the folks on the Anyway don't have this particular problem because they're newer to this, which just totally makes sense. But for folks who have been doing this longer, Phil mentions we need some different approaches for getting folks to register to vote, that those like same messages. And I know, Phil, you're working on this, trying to find more creativity for these get out the vote ads, like those typical um, messages aren't working. So that's a great example.
Yeah, GOTV is a huge one. I know that like a lot of folks that I'm in conversation with have talked about like especially engaging younger voters. Like a lot of younger voters here get out the vote and they're like, but why? It doesn't, I did and like look what happened. So finding ways to refresh those messages for sure.
Susanna, I think has a great point of sometimes tech is overcomplicating processes. And maybe we can take a step back and think, should we pause or tweak or bring some fresh air to the idea that let's just add more tech to this and that'll solve something? Interesting. Monica's talking about a whole different approach away from voter registration and realizing that it's actually better to focus their limited capacity on ballot education. It can be so hard to understand ballots. It's the area that we have tried to work in as well, and it's a big one that needs a lot more support. So that's great. And Elka similarly is his focus on the down ballot. Great. Should we get into our next?
Yeah, thank you all for sharing those. And so we'll get into our next topic. Alexia.
This is Alexia. This is one I hear so much, and I'm hoping to dispel it for us all today. One barrier that often comes up from people is this belief that we don't have the resources to try something new. And I think something that I've seen a lot is having that or experiencing a scarcity or scarcity mindset doesn't in itself make us less creative, right? I think some of my most creative work has been when I have no money and I need to make it happen. But it can make us less willing to take risks and make us more comfortable in staying in the same old of our tactics. But I want to kind of reframe and push back on this question for us today and ask instead, what is the cost of not trying new things? So, for example, one answer to this is burnout. In my experience, creative advocacy is not just for mobilizing the people that we're trying to reach, but it also matters for us, for the organizers ourselves, right? I think for many of us, we are coming to activism from a place of frustration. Many of us are forced into being advocates or activists because we are not getting equal access to something or because we're experiencing discrimination or marginalization. So there can be a lot of anger and frustration on what drives this work. And for me, leaning into more creative tactics and using art helped me tap more into spending my energy and my advocacy vision on getting to the better future that we imagine is possible. Because at the end of the day, like, are we frustrated about barriers at the polls? Yes. But what I really believe in is I believe in the power of the disability community. I love the disability community, and I think accessibility is awesome. And I want more spaces to be accessible, and I want more people to view that and be moved by that. And we had some of our organizers share earlier this year, we have a creative ballot bingo education tool that we use. And one of our organizers decided to do ballot bingo instead of doing their standard voter registration presentation. And they shared, I didn't realize how much I needed to facilitate a bingo rather than give a presentation. If it's more fun for you to be a part of, that also matters. Another reason is that we might be wasting time, money, and resources by pouring it into tactics that aren't getting results. So that might be a legitimate cost as well. And then lastly, we are losing the opportunity to learn and grow. I love from Alexandra's example that had they not asked their target population how they identified or how they saw themselves, they might have totally missed the mark on engaging them. But instead, they took that time to learn and grow before jumping into identifying a tactic. But I do have good news for everyone. Good news alert. Creativity does not have to be expensive. So if this really is a barrier for you, or maybe you're trying to convince other organizers or your director or whoever that it's worth it to try these creative tacks, it really does not have to be costly. So we're going to share a couple of hot tips. And I will share hot tips is me trying to be creative in this presentation by using a phrase I would never use. So I'm trying something new right here in this presentation. Hot tips. One of our tips is to take your existing action. Maybe you're already tied to doing it. Your team is comfortable. But can you challenge yourself to add one element of surprise to an existing action? So for example, I'm sure most folks in this room have done tabling before. And we are probably going to continue to do tabling, right? But is there a way to go from the boring sitting behind a table at a conference, handing out flyers, picture a sloth yawning, to can we go to tabling, jazz hands? Can we make it more exciting? So I'm going to give a couple of examples. Next slide, please. This one was how we elevated a table for less than $20. We took our large sign, we brought a bunch of Post-it notes, Sharpies, tape, and we asked our attendees who visited a question to share one word or quote that powered their advocacy. Our table was easily the most active in the conference floor. People were excited to share their responses. People were taking pictures with their responses, getting inspiration from others, coming up to us. And all this required was Post-it notes, Sharpies, and tape. And we were able to have much more engaging conversations and photos and lasting impressions with folks. Another example is from our first project with the Center for Artistic Activism, where we were tabling at a statewide training for poll workers. And we really tried to make this the most exciting table that we could. And so we did not limit ourselves to just the assigned spot, but we got these stand-up signs and tried to create mystery and intrigue throughout the conference venue, directing people to our table. So we had a whole comic book theme going on. So you can see one of the signs says, in a world where every vote counts, ... a hero emerges to champion accessibility. And then by the time you get to our table, you see people in capes, comic book cutouts, a backdrop of a city, fun spin the wheel that's very engaging. And we spent about $150 on these tabling materials, but you could do it for way less with a thrifty mindset. And we were not just creating a visual spectacle, right? Like when people joined our table and did our interactive spin the wheel game on polling place accessibility, we were clapping, we were cheering. We had people coming up to us like, what is all the noise over here in this corner? Like, what are you guys cheering about? And then we looped them into becoming accessibility democracy allies. We had 2 team members walking around with capes trying to draw people in. I think one of the biggest mistakes of tabling is when folks just sit behind their table. You need to be out there engaging, drawing in. But we have a couple more hot tips for you too. So another idea is sort of similar, adding one element of surprise, or taking your current plan and asking, how can this be just 10% more unexpected? So I have two examples to spark your imagination. On the left, we have a group of college students with disabilities from Houston Community College, and we were working with them to train disabled college students to become poll workers. And it was sort of necessary that we have a slideshow presentation so that they can get all the information that they need, right? But we wanted to engage the students in doing that. And we asked them, like, oh, do you want a part of like this training presentation? And they were like, no, that sounds super boring. And I was like, that is very valid. And they proposed instead doing a skit about being a poll worker. So you have to use your imagination, but this line of students is actually a voter and poll workers. And they, in their skit, used some of their own experiences of what non-disabled people had told them, like, oh, don't worry about voting, it's too complicated for you. And we're able to show the role that a poll worker can play in real time. And then on the right, this is from our democracy salon. So we gave out manicures at a voter registration event. And this is why I'm like encouraging folks to, like, if you have an idea, just explore, even if it seems impossible. Because when we first had this idea, I thought it would be our most expensive event, like paying cosmetologists, paying for nail polish, all the supplies. But we ended up getting all of it donated by a nail salon who was just excited about the idea. So you never know like what resources your community might have unless you pitch a crazy idea and invite them to contribute. And then last tip for you all is to free yourself from perfection and be okay with your creative idea failing. These were all successful ideas that I'm sharing, but we have had many others that did not go as well. But we learned from them. And something that I learned from the Center for Artistic Activism is to frame these different trials as experiments. So rather than hinging success on them, making sure to learn from them. So I want to challenge you all in the chat, thinking about some of the other actions that you've shared you're working on, is what is one low cost, low lift surprise that you could add to what you're already doing?
Bill's ahead of the game and mentioned some henna tattooing, which could make a tabling event more exciting.
I love that.
Ooh, Ted mentions karaoke. That's fun. We've done some actions that have made good use of karaoke with maybe some altered lyrics and maybe some performers brought in. Flash dance mobs could perhaps fall in the traditions category, just to flag that, but could also be new to some audiences. Julia mentioned singing to members of Congress's answering machines instead of reading scripts. That is also something we have experimented with. If you do that, I would love to hear how it goes, Julia. Emily, okay, this is such a great, is planning on posting some flyers, but maybe could add some glitter or tearaway strips to the bottom. That's such a nice little just 10% more creativity. These are great.
Yeah, keep them coming. These are really nice to see.
I'm personally bought into all these ideas, so I hope they happen. I want glitter and karaoke.
I wanted to read that zine that they're mentioning in the chat. It sounds awesome.
And Zanny's mentioning costumes, and I think we've seen a lot recently how fun costumes can make such a difference. especially in a lot of ICE protests, and how you can, put on a dinosaur costume and pass out cookies and brochures, and people, I'm guessing, are going to be more likely to take them. All right, let's
Right.
get to our last pattern.
Hi, folks, I'm back. For our last pattern, we're going to talk about the trope, I'm not creative, which is often one that we also run into all the time. Maybe you have just like a different skill set, a different background that you feel does not lend you to creativity, but you're wrong. Everyone can be creative. Everyone has a perspective, has a history, has a way of life that adds to their creativity. Don't limit your own mind before you even try. That's a limiting belief. Don't live into a limiting belief that you're not creative. Instead, ask yourself, what can I do to inspire myself? So a couple of examples that I have for you all is that last year, one of my tasks in my organization was to do a gap analysis about what are people doing? Because we've often heard the phrase, you have to know your history, right? We stand on the shoulders of giants that come before us. We have to know our history. But it's also important to know your present, to know what is going on out there. What are people doing? And see, it's almost important to see like what inspires you. What are you like, oh, that would be so cool to try in my community. That would be so cool to try with my audience. Or I don't want to do that. That does not sound like anything that I could do, that I'm equipped to do, that I'm skilled to do. That is not what I want to do. It is just important to know what you don't want to do as what you do want to do. And when I was doing my gap analysis, I found so many amazing organizations that I'd never heard of before and was like, oh my gosh, these are incredible. And I saw so many things like one organization was like, we are helping migrant women who are farm workers. How are we doing that? We're providing them legal services to attain back wages from times that they were illegally underpaid. And I was like, well, you know what? I can't do that, but that's amazing. You've logged into what you're working on. It inspired me to think about like, what could I be working on? There's one organization in Colorado I found called Warm Cookies for the Revolution. First of all, fantastic name. But they had such creative ideas and things they were doing in different neighborhoods of the Denver area. That was so awesome. So oftentimes, it's the same with like if you are an artist, right? If you want to make art, you have to go look at art. If you want to write an incredible movie or an incredible show, some of the best thing you can do is like go to the movies, go to the theater, immerse yourself in what other people are doing. So similarly, in our work, we should immerse ourselves in what other organizations are doing. They're not competition, right? They're community. They're just a way for us to plug and invest and pour into one another. So that is definitely something that I would recommend, is to do a gap analysis around your topic, your area, and see what other folks are doing. See where you can adapt, what you can adopt, and where you can plug in. And in general, when we're thinking of like what new program we're going to start, too much choice can also be a bad thing. It can be just as paralyzing as no choice. So by doing a gap analysis, it allows us to kind of understand the universe that we're operating out of. My last idea for you is the bad idea brainstorm. Take time with your team or with yourself for 15, 20, 30 minutes, an hour. I don't care how much time you use. And throw it all out. Throw out some bad ideas. Maybe it's way too expensive. It's way too big scale. It's unrealistic. It's not going to work. It doesn't matter. Just throw it out there. And I say this for a couple of reasons. One, oftentimes we are scared of a bad idea. We are scared of having a bad idea, but we gotta like root through all the stuff to find the gems, to find, the gold. As a junior staffer, I know that there can be a lot of pressure to prove yourself, to have the good idea, to have the winning one, because you want to impress your bosses, your team. You want to prove to people that you belong there. But by intentionally setting up a bad idea brainstorm, it levels the playing field for everyone and creates opportunities for both creativity and for connection between your team. Have a laugh, have like a, oh my gosh, that would never work, but that's hilarious moment, and see how it not only brings your team closer together, but brings you closer to what is your next idea. And it can end up being a modge podge of each other's ideas based off of kind of what you present in this bad idea brainstorm. But that's what we want. We want everyone to feel like they're bought in because they are part of the journey to getting there. So those are two ideas for you to incorporate potentially in your work, the gap analysis and the bad idea brainstorm. And I promise you, something will come up. Something, some way. I think, Crystal, we have a question for folks.
Yeah. Well, first, one thing we want to add, just kind of jumping off of Alexandra and the exercise you just mentioned, we have a similar one at the Center for Artistic Activism. Sometimes we call it making the impossible possible. And so we will often do this both with our team and in our workshops, where once we're really clear on what we're trying to achieve, we give ourselves even like a small amount of time, like 5 to 10 minutes, to come up with impossible ideas. So along the lines of what Alexandra's saying, maybe they're bad ideas too, but we say like truly impossible ones, you write them all down and you just give yourself the freedom to think really big. You come up with a big list, and then you kind of go back and figure out together, like, well, how can we make this impossible idea possible? It really opens things up and lets us think of things we never would have before. Like Alexandra saying, you can find those gems in that gold along the way.
Yeah, and similarly, we have a workbook called the Art of Activism Workbook. We'll share links at the end. It's free. But there's this idea that constraints can really help us be creative. And so there's an exercise in the workbook called Thinking Inside the Box to help you think outside the box. And it just makes you think about either an action you just did or you're going to do, or maybe one that you like from Alexandra's exercise that she mentioned, and just figure out how you do it with different prompts. Like, how would you do this action if it had to happen with one person or with 100 people? How would you do it if it took place on a busy street or at sea? How would you do it if you only had 1/10 of your budget? Or how would you do it if you had to do it all within a large cardboard box? And if you just think through those constraints, it might open something up that you never would have thought of before. And yeah, come up with new things, and it can spur that creativity. So our question for you.
Yeah, and so here's the question Alexandra was mentioning. What's one impossible, impractical, or questionable idea you could use in your work? And we'd love for you to answer that in the chat.
Great, some dance.
This Alexia, and I will say too, I feel like this does not maybe apply. I feel like we have a lot of really creative people on this call, but if this feels challenging, I would still encourage you that it doesn't mean you're not creative or that artistic activism isn't for you. This is a skill like any other. I found it really challenging to come up with more than like 5 ideas when I first started pushing myself to use more artistic activism. And now it is coming a lot easier. So the more you practice it too, the easier it gets.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think, Julia, that's a great idea. Just give yourself 10 minutes and see what kind of effective graphic you can make. And maybe it's the graphic that is Ted's impossible idea of a protest sign that actually wins folks over. And you can just take 10 minutes and see. Ice cream truck voter education and registration. We did a project like that in Detroit that I think was pretty great back in 2020. Parody, performance, great. More creative ideas.
Great. So you can keep this coming. Keep your ideas going. And oh, sorry about that. All right. There we go. And Alexia is gonna do a little review for us.
Yes, so just recapping from today, these are some patterns that might be coming up for you or maybe coming up for people that you work with. Maybe repeating what you've done before, just rinse and repeat each year. Feeling like you don't have the resources to try new things or feeling blocked and uncreative. all might be signs that you should lean into creativity. And you can use creativity to conquer those blocks. Um, so we have some invitations for you to try to help you break into those practices. One idea is to set aside just 1 hour a month for creative ideation. If you are like me and you live by your calendar, you can even just literally block it off on your calendar as an idea time. Maybe you can do what Alexandra suggested and do some research and see what other fabulous things people are up to. Or you can jot down some impossible ideas or do some analysis of your past work and challenge yourself to how it could have been more creative or unexpected or fun. You can also start a notebook or notes app on your phone for unfinished, impossible, or bad ideas. You never know when you might come back to a tactic, or maybe it will apply for a different action in the future. A lot of bad ideas can become good ideas eventually. And then lastly, and this is my favorite one, is find a creativity accountability buddy. I feel like the best ideas happen when you're able to go back and forth with people, get challenges to them, have someone else's brain add something totally new to what you were thinking. So maybe that's your team member or a friend, or maybe it's Crystal and Rachel. They are some of my creativity accountability buddies. So many options. And so I will, ask too for reflection. What is one idea, question, or shift in perspective that folks are leaving with? And I welcome you to raise your hand if you want to come off mute to share, or you can continue responding in the chat.
Eva mentions just how great a physical notebook is.
I love that. I have like 7 though, because I like leave them everywhere and then I find them again and then I'm like, oh, this idea from like 4 years ago. Wait, this is nice. So maybe notebooks, plural.
Ada is excited about the bad brainstorm idea. Happy to hear that.
And going along with Alexia's question that she just asked, and y'all are kind of getting to this in your answers here, but like, is there one small thing you could try in the next month even? Is it that you're going to implement these notebooks or bad idea brainstorms, or is it something else? If you'd like to share that, we welcome that.
I think I'm going to try the idea Keith put in of a running list of cool projects to revisit for inspiration. That also gets at Alexandra's sort of gap analysis idea. But yeah, if you're feeling low on inspiration, just to have a list of things to get you going again. Great. Thanks, Elka. You're going to set aside an hour per month for creative ideation. Let us know how it goes.
Great. MC is sharing, started this Zoom feeling like I had no fresh ideas, but in fact had two during the Zoom. I think this is a testament to the benefit of allowing yourself to set aside dedicated time to prime the pump of creativity. Thank you. Thanks, MC. That's awesome. Love to hear it.
And Phil's going to keep paper and pen by the bed to write down all the solutions that he dreams up in his literal dreams.
Great. And we have some more ways to help you find creativity. if you're wanting more. And we see like y'all are still putting them in the chat. Please feel free to. But we have the Art of Activism book and workbook that Rachel mentioned. Um, thank you, Rachel. The links are in the chat. And this book was written by our co-founders, and it's full of a lot of history, case studies, and more kind of all about artistic activism, things you can try. And then we also have our creative campaign toolkits, and these are available online to download for free. The link is also in the chat. And this is kind of like a how-to for building creative campaigns. There's different exercises you can do in it, like the Impossible Possible Brainstorm, lots of other case studies, and different folks are featured that we've worked with and all of the amazing creative projects they've done. So we invite you to check those out.
You can also sign up for our newsletter. We are putting a lot more artistic activism tips and sort of inspiring stories of other artistic activists in them these days because we know people really need that. So sign up to get every other week or so a little dose of inspiration. And you'll also stay up to date on future events that we'll have that can help you come up with ideas and feel connected and more hopeful. And you can also work with us. We do lots of things, events like these, other talks, longer workshops, multi-day training courses. We'll do consulting or help people develop campaign, help with professional development as well. And so Crystal put a link in the chat for that, and feel free to reach out.
And Rachel, we have about 5 minutes left.
About 5 minutes,
Any
yeah.
maybe messages we want to highlight in the
Or
chat?
any final questions about creativity that we could try to answer?
Thank you all for the nice messages. People are saying it's a really helpful conversation. Thanks for the ideas. Keep it fresh.
Thank you all. We'll play you out with some classic tunes.